production value. This is beautiful. What a beautiful day. You know what it is. Another dose of spiritual bleach. High strength, high power. Spiritual bleach, pointings to help us move past these sticky blockages that many people face on the spiritual path. The sticking points, which ultimately aren't even there. We know this, but these could be gaps in our understanding. These could be points that the mind has fixated on, or perhaps has quite subtly and cleverly snuck into a little hiding place within a gap in the understanding. And that sometimes manifests as what feels like a spiritual blockage. But it's not like there's anything actually there in the way. It's just another convincing illusion. And all it requires is a slight shift in perspective in order to remove this illusion, remove the illusion of the blockage. Now sometimes it's just a case of understanding what's happened, this happened, simply understanding, oh I see, I've become lost again, I became ego and mind identified with a specific thing, and that feels like I'm somehow spiritually blocked. But fully reside and abide within the pure presence of consciousness, unmixed, unstained, uncoloured by any of the appearances within the illusory world, and revealed, this pure presence of awareness could never be blocked. But specifically today, I wanted to speak on there is no present moment either. What? There's no present moments either. And I'll say straight away, right out of the gate, I'm aware that in a lot of my videos and in a lot of my meditations, and most spiritual teachers will speak at times of find the present moment. Focus attention into the present moment. It's only ever the present moment. And this is right, and this is a powerful pointing to bring the body and mind into the presence of conscious awareness. But I wanted to bring attention to a spiritual blockage that can occur when the mind takes hold of this teaching, takes hold of the concept, the idea of the present moment, and herein some trouble begins to arise. So firstly, some basics. There is no future, there is no past. The future can only exist in your mind as imagination, as apprehension, as worry, or anticipation of something positive, fantasy. But nonetheless, all of this imagination occurs in the mind, and it all occurs within the present moment. So too, there is no such thing as the past, not in the way we imagine it to exist. It's not a place. It's not a thing. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. What exists is memory. And memory also arises in the now. So, no future, no past. Oh, it's only ever now. Now, many people on hearing this have a huge revelation and a massive, oh, what a relief. And it's profound. It's a powerful relief. But then over time, that can become also somehow unsatisfying, and we start to feel as though I'm struggling to stay present. And what is happening here is that the mind, doing its usual thing of trying to apply strenuous effort to remain in this concept called the present moment. It's the mind trying to do it right, trying to correctly apply this teaching, and if only I could fully focus and hold on to the now, this thing called the now, the present moment, and properly through force ignore the future and ignore the past and just stay resolutely within this thing called the now, the mind attempting to do this becomes frantic and exhausted as it begins to fail in its task. The mind constantly tries to then go to the future and to the past, and then we become frustrated and disappointed as we then have to bring ourselves back into this present moment. And this happens on the spiritual path to many spiritual seekers, sometimes without even realizing it. You may believe that you are doing your spiritual practice by trying to focus firmly on the now. And there is a lot of juice in that. There is a lot of learning and understanding as you go through this, because bringing the mind into the present, it removes a lot of the mind's usual activity of worrying about the future and imagining the future and trying to plan for the future and trying to construct a future and analysing the past or reminiscing on the past, having nostalgia for the past or resenting the past or trying to remember happy memories and trying to heal the negative. It removes a lot of this energy, and so on the spiritual path this is good. This is a good thing to do, to bring into the present moment. But the spiritual blockage can occur because we don't realise there's a mistake that can be made here. In that, the mind begins to believe that this thing called the present moment is a moment in time. And you see what's happening here? The subtle belief in time is sneaking back in. So the crucial bit of spiritual bleach here is to fully recognize and understand there's no such thing as time. Time is created by the mind. It's not that time is there and the mind observes it, that there is a thing called time and the mind observes it, and then, oh, now we've found this presence thing, what we're choosing to do is ignore time, we're choosing to ignore reality and bring ourselves into the present moment only. That's it's subtle, it's very subtle, but that's where the blockage is. That the blockages are often very subtle. That's the subtle belief that there is a thing called time, but we're going to choose to ignore it. That's the subtle belief that forms the spiritual blockage here, and why the pointing there is no present moment can be very important, very necessary, because we must understand the mind is constructing time. It is creating a false belief, a false narrative. It is attempting to interpret what it observes and place it into a framework of a linear sequence of events that it then conceptualizes and turns into a false construct called time. it then struggles to understand its own concept. One of the things that we're most confused about, scientists are most confused about, is time. It doesn't make sense. And we struggle to comprehend this vast past, this eons of past time. And the future is incomprehensibly vast amount of time. No, there is no such thing. It simply is not there. It never was there. It never will be there. Remove the concept of time and you go into the eternal now. So why would I say there's no such thing as the present moment if what I'm also saying is it's only ever the present moment? It's understanding that the present moment isn't a moment in time. Present moment is a pair of words that is probably one of the best, most appetizing ways that the mind can attempt to understand something that is ultimately not understandable by the mind. Why is it not understandable by the mind? Because the mind is constructed out of time as well as constructing time. It requires time in order to exist. If there's no such thing as time, the mind completely loses its purpose. And so the words present moment, the concept present moment, is a good halfway stage for the mind to reside in. You gotta bear with me. Words are such an imperfect tool. I'm doing the best with the tools that I have. The English language in particular is a very object-focused, concept-focused language. So, the mind, the halfway stage, the mind, because the mind is a time-bound activity, a time-bound entity, made out of time and constructing time simultaneously, requires a concept that is based upon time. And the concept based upon time, that it can sort of comfortably reside in as a sort of spiritual activity, which is beautiful and positive and beneficial, is the concept of, as a mind, I'm going to try and stay present. But let's remove that blockage now. When you withdraw your attention away from thoughts, away from concepts, away from ideas, and just reside in the reality as it is, even this concept of the present moment falls away. And this is a huge relief, especially if you've been on the spiritual path for a little while, you feel like you're not getting anywhere, you feel like you're blocked. Let go of this idea that you're trying to stay present. You won't hear that from many spiritual teachers, and I don't say it very often, because for most people it's a good focal point to bring the mind into. But if you're a bit further along and you need the spiritual bleach, you need the full nuclear blast of spirituality, this is it today. Let go of the idea of the present moment. There's no present moment either. Why is there no present moment? Because the present moment implies that there is a future and a past and a present, that there are three moments of time. Past moment, future moment, present moment. There's none of them. None of them. None of them. None of them. Nothing. Nothing, 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 nothing. Not in reality. It exists in the mind, absolutely. Where does time go? When you sleep. This is why you fall asleep and wake up and it feels like no time's passed. That's why it feels like that, because it's the mind that is registering this false thing called time. But in sleep, your experience, sleep is proof of this. Sleep proves this. No time passes in sleep. How can no time pass in sleep? Because there's no mind to construct and create time. The blockage, the subtle belief that happens here, believing that there's this external thing called time that the mind ordinarily observes and takes a very accurate, yes, very accurate, I'm counting days and numbers and years, and yes, I'm being a very good mind by doing all of that. But now we're on the spiritual path, so we're choosing to ignore the time. But time is real, but we're just choosing to ignore it, and we're doing a silly spiritual thing by ignoring time. Aren't we silly, but I feel peaceful? No, that's the wrong subtle belief there. Instead, withdraw the attention from this concept of time, time vanishes. No such thing. The present moment is not a split second of time sandwiched between an infinite past and infinite future. Infinity is happening now. Eternity is happening now. This is eternity. When is eternity going to start? Did eternity begin and will it end? No. So therefore it must be happening now. We can feel this. Don't just listen to my words and construct a concept out of this. We can do this now. We can do this now. We have to do this now. There's no other time to do it. When is infinity? Infinity is not going to begin at some point in the future. Infinity, it's not like one day you're going to wake up, one day you're going to be enlightened, and then infinity can begin. One day in the future, I'm going to become enlightened, and infinite bliss can begin at that point. But right now, I need to spend time up until then. No. No. Infinity is now. Wake up to the reality that eternity is happening now. And it didn't begin, and it's not going to end. This is it. This is it. It could not be any less complicated. Complication is the world of the mind. The mind is involved in complication. The mind is involved in franticness and right and wrong. Who's saying the right thing? You're doing it spiritually right, you're doing it spiritually wrong. This is the world of names and form. That is the world of mind. It doesn't have to be like that. Spirituality is the one thing where there shouldn't be any arguments. It's just everyone remembering what you already knew. Oh, yeah. Sometimes it just needs a bit of permission to just let go. You remember how long it took to learn the concept of time when you were a kid? They spent years trying to teach you this. There's a room full of children that are like, what are you talking about? They're trying to show you the hands on the clock, the big hand and the little hand, and they go around, and this one means this and this one means that, and kids are like, right. Like, this is weird. It didn't make sense when you were a kid, but because the adults were so earnest about it, because the adults were so sincere that this thing is definitely real, this thing called time, it is 100% real, and you need to know it because it's important. And being an innocent, wonderful, beautiful child, you believed it because you trust the adults. Sure, why would the adults lie? Well, I guess it's not that they're lying, they genuinely believed it. They believed it themselves, so they want to tell you to believe it. They genuinely believe this, they're not lying. So as the kid, you're like, yeah, they're not lying, they really mean this. Oh, there's a thing called time, and I'm so and so years old, and there are these things called days, and there are these things called months and years. But then you come to it and you go, hang on, there's no such thing as any of this. Now that you're an adult and you're free to make your own decisions about reality and what reality is, and let's base reality on our experience. Let's base reality on what is rather than a concept, rather than backwards engineering a concept. What if we base reality on what actually is? What if we understand based on our own experience rather than what we were taught? What you were taught is this concept of time, days, weeks, months, years. No, there's no days, weeks, months or years. There never was, there never will be. Never. Not once. Not once. Wind's picking up. The universe is 0 years old. Science is trying to figure out how old the universe is. Well, I'll tell you, 0. And it will only ever be 0. How could the universe age? How old is the universe? How many seconds, how many hours has the universe been going on for? Trying to measure something based on an image that we created, and then now we don't even understand our own image. That's the best way I can describe the folly of the human mind. Struggling to understand. Dealing with the suffering and pain of the story that it created. Confused. Confused that the universe isn't conforming to the rules that we've decided the universe conforms to. I'm going to get out of the wind and go to a different spot. Try and get out of the wind behind a tree or something. Confused that the universe is not conforming to the rules that we've decided that the universe should conform to. Why doesn't the universe seem to operate on this thing called time? And why can't we measure this thing called time? Why is time so strange in different parts of this universe? Could it be that there's no such thing? Could it be that the tools we're using to try and understand the universe, aka the human brain, maybe it's a problem with the tool and not a problem with the universe? So, the spiritual bleach right here is that there is no present moment either. And if you have found yourself locked in a struggle and locked in a strain of trying to remain present and finding it hard because you feel like there is a future and you're just trying to ignore it, and there is a past and you're just trying to ignore it, shift the perspective and instead recognize there's no future, no past, and that implies also that there's no such thing as the present. It shouldn't be an effort. Awakening, it ultimately is the only thing that doesn't require any effort whatsoever. No effort. It should be the simplest, easiest thing that it's possible to do. Enlightenment is often said, it's so hard, it's so difficult. It's really difficult to awaken, it's really difficult to enlighten. No, the mind really wants you to believe that. The mind loves that narrative. Oh, it's really rare. It's really rare. It's really difficult, really tough to enlighten. No, nobody can do it. It's really tough. Yeah, the mind loves that narrative. Don't fall for that one. It's a common one. Just leave everything. Don't even try to stay present. Understand the mind constructed time. The mind created time. It was never, ever observing time. It's been an illusion. This entire time. This entire time was an illusion. The clues are even there in the language. It was an illusion the whole time. So, to shift up the meditation, shift up the perspective of your spiritual understanding. It's not a case of discarding your previous teaching, your previous learnings. It's not a case of discarding the path that you've been on and going, oh, that was a waste of. It's not a case of discarding all of that. That's all been very good stuff, beautiful stuff, but it's the boat that brought you to the island. Don't stay on the boat. Get onto the island. Don't stay on the boat. Get off the boat. Go to the island. It's beautiful here. It's a wonderful island. The kingdom of heaven. And never forget that's where we're going to. The kingdom of heaven. This is why the kingdom of heaven is often, and when any tradition or religion speaks of a beautiful, wonderful afterlife, what they always say that it's going to be that way forever. You're going to be in bliss forever. You're going to be in heaven forever. There's no time in heaven. If they said, yes, you'll be in heaven and heaven will last for 100 years, it's not quite as beautiful, is it? Why is that? If time was such a great thing, if time was such a wonderful, marvelous thing, wouldn't we measure heaven in time? Wouldn't we measure enlightenment in time? And here's the real liberation. If heaven is eternal, heaven doesn't begin at a certain point, and it doesn't end at a certain point, so it must be happening now. When is heaven going to happen? Considering it's infinite by its own definition, considering it's eternal by its own definition, it's already happening. The only reason that you don't experience it is because of the identification with the mind. The mind is the veil that endarkens your experience, and it's the cessation of mind activity that enlightens the being. There is no time in heaven, there is no time in enlightenment, there is no time at all, and there never was. Never, not one second has ever passed. A single second never passed, ever. Planet Earth is 0 years old. You are 0 years old. You are 0 seconds. So, that's my spiritual bleach for today. There is no present moment either. No future, no past, no present, no such thing as time. And the key point here, time is not a real thing that we choose to ignore. Time is something the mind created. And once your belief in the concept of time is eroded by withdrawing your attention away from the mind, the attention can rest in eternity. How do we do that? I will just finish that with that one final point. How do we do that? Withdraw your attention, because the mind is constructed out of awareness, and you have a choice about where you place that awareness. Do not place awareness in to the concepts, the thoughts, the feelings, the ideas, the images of the mind, and instead withdraw that attention, and by doing so, all external objects, all internal objects vanish, and instead you reside purely as the infinite space of pure conscious awareness. That is everything I wanted to say today. Don't forget to hit that non-existent like and subscribe button. And I've also started channel memberships. If you want to support me and my work, you want to support these videos and help me afford to buy a new camera and get a better microphone on the top, then please consider joining. But it's by no means mandatory. I'll still keep producing these videos, the Spiritual Bleach series. I will do a few members only videos that just have the more perhaps extreme ends of Advaita meditations, formal meditations, if you really want to fully buy into this teaching, these pointings. That is everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I feel a great deal of gratitude towards anyone who is awakening, because by awakening and eroding your own particular narratives, your own particular story of your body and mind, you are withdrawing a huge amount of suffering from the common stock of humanity, and for that I thank you. Thank you so much. Take care, be well, and whatever you do, don't stay present.